You ever notice how power changes people? I mean real power, the kind you can't see, but you sure as hell feel. Like the first time someone in a cheap blazer tells you you're trespassing on your own sidewalk, and you realize the neighborhood you moved to for peace has become a little kingdom with its own rules, its own queen. That's exactly how it started for us, with Colleen Duett standing there, arms folded, smirk so sharp it could cut steel, telling me my 12-year-old niece, Leia, was a vandal because she drew a dove in sidewalk chalk. Yeah, you heard that right, sidewalk chalk. And in that moment, as her little hand trembled in mine, I felt something snap, the kind of snap that says, not today. You're calling a kid's chalk drawing vandalism? I said, my voice low but steady. Colleen didn't blink, just that same smile. Rules are rules, she said, and you're not exempt. Even if you used to flash a badge. I didn't smile back. That's funny, I told her. Because according to county code, this sidewalk is municipal easement, not HOA property. Which means your threats aren't worth the paper they're printed on. She blinked, just once. And let me tell you, if you've ever felt that little rush, standing up to a bully, knowing you've got the law and not just your fists on your side, then you know exactly how my blood felt right then. But here's the thing. I didn't just move here to raise Leia because I wanted quiet. I moved here because after my brother, her dad, got killed in a no-knock raid meant for somebody else, I needed to believe the world could still be good, that nobody would ever hurt her again. That's what made me snap when, a week before, a volunteer pointed a taser at her and called it protocol. I called it what it was, abuse. And I wasn't about to let it slide. Colleen's eyes narrowed. You think anyone here cares what you call it? I turned to the iron archway at the entrance, where Leia had drawn her dove, her dad's nickname for her. She drew it for him. She misses him. We walk that path every Sunday. Someone in the crowd tried to laugh, someone else looked away. But the truth hung in the air like smoke. So, let's be clear, I said, facing Colleen. Threaten me all you want. But if you ever let anyone put hands or weapons on her again, I'll make this place a federal case study in civil abuse. Her mouth twisted. You threatening me? No, I said. I'm promising you. Of course, she fired back. Next morning, there's a violation notice taped to my door. Leia found it first. Did I do something bad? She asked. No. Kid, I said, you did something honest. But that afternoon, as I walked the perimeter, I saw it. Neighbors out but not out. One eye on the mailbox, pretending nothing was happening. There was a tension, like before a storm, and it hung over everything. That's when I met Mrs. Calhoun, 72, always pruning her roses. Just so. I already heard about Leia, she said. And yeah, she'd had her own run-ins. The HOA made her grandson take down his pride flag. No warning, just 2 men and a ladder. That's when it clicked. This wasn't isolated. One mom fined for a toddler's plastic playhouse. A black homeowner accused of loitering in his own garage. Little tickets that added up to fear. But what really gutted me was the Daniels family. Just moved in, young baby. Their fence 2 inches too high. Colleen forced them to tear it down. If you want to be part of this community, respect the boundaries, she told them. So I went home, pulled up the HOA charter, and found what I expected. Nothing. No authorization for any enforcement unit. No legal reason for tasers, radios, badges. It was all theater. Power because nobody stood up and said that's enough. That night, Leia wouldn't draw. They'll just take it down, she said, eyes big and scared. I put my arm around her. Not this time. You promise? She whispered. I promised. Because this wasn't just about chalk anymore. It was about who gets to feel safe. At the next HOA meeting, Colleen moved the location, basement, private. No witnesses. She called it security restructuring. I called it what it was, suppression. I watched as the treasurer, Mark Barron, sat quietly, hands shaking as Colleen rattled off statistics, and bragged about empowering volunteers. Mark's eyes met mine. There was something there, like regret. Days later, escalation. Certified letter. I was creating a hostile environment, banned from meetings. They didn't want to find me now. They wanted to silence me. I didn't react. 48 hours, radio silence. Then I hit the city clerk's office, public records. Found everything I needed. The so-called task force was a sham. No city approval. No weapons allowed. Just a costume party with radios and a fake sense of authority. I built my file, screenshots, Charter contradictions. Every time Colleen lied in writing. And then I made a call. Not to a lawyer. To an old contact in the DOJ Civil Rights Division. I'm not calling as a professor or an agent, I said. I'm calling as a guardian. He told me to send the documents. I found Mark that night. He was watering his hedges in the rain, folder in hand. Why are you giving this to me, he asked. Because I think you've been looking for a way out. Inside that folder, every incident, every fake fine, every misuse of authority. He said he'd vouch for it under oath. That was enough. Next board meeting, packed house, standing room only. Colleen in her navy blazer, smile fixed, but you could tell she felt the walls closing in. She tried to shut me down, called me a disruptive party. I raised my hand, opened my binder. In here is every abuse of power this board's committed. Fake citations, unauthorized use of force, a timeline already sent to the DOJ. Silence. Then Mark stood. He's telling the truth. I've seen the records. The board acted outside its authority. One by one, hands went up, a vote to suspend Colleen, to dissolve the task force, to refund the fines and issue a public apology for tossing Leah. It wasn't a dramatic end. No shouting, no cuffs, just the slow crumble of control. After, neighbors came up. Some shook my hand. Some just said thank you. Leah waited at home, chalk and sketch pad ready. You think they'll let me draw now? She asked. I think they already did, I said. And you know what? That weekend, we went back to the archway. Leah with a bucket of chalk, me by her side. She drew the dove, but this time gave it a sky, gave it friends, turned that patch of sidewalk into a mural of hope. Neighbors stopped to watch, kids added stars and flowers, and nobody erased anything. Within weeks, the task force was gone. Fines refunded. Colleen moved out, quiet, no drama, just a for sale sign on her lawn and a thin envelope with her resignation. The fear in Valamont crest began to lift. People stood closer, waved longer. Yard signs came down, security cameras got turned in. Community started to mean something again. And Leah? She draws every weekend now, chalk dust on her jeans, a smile that won't quit. Me? I'm just an uncle walking beside her, knowing that sometimes all it takes to change the story is one person refusing to be silent. That's how you beat a bully. That's how you take back your home. So now, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Ever stood up to an HOA? A boss? A bully? Drop your stories in the comments. Let's talk about what real justice looks like and how community is built, not by rules, but by people willing to stand together. If you thought Colleen's fall meant everything snapped back to normal overnight, well, I wish life worked that way. The truth is, when power changes hands, people get nervous. Some just want to forget the whole mess ever happened. Some act like they never knew Colleen at all. And then there's the silent crowd, the ones who peek through blinds, still scared the next person, with a badge, real or fake, might show up at their door. 4 weeks after the vote, you could feel that tension hanging in the air, like the ground itself was waiting to see who would plant their flag next. But Leah, she bounced back faster than anyone. Maybe it's something about being 12, or maybe it's that when you've lost as much as she has, you learn to hold on to small victories like lifelines. We hit the sidewalk every Saturday, carrying that bucket of chalk like a badge of honor. The mural kept growing. New birds, bigger sky, sometimes a whole parade of animals. Drawn by neighborhood kids who barely glanced at me anymore, which was a good sign. There was laughter, for the first time in ages. One little guy drew a dragon and called it HOA Buster. I nearly cried laughing. The new resident committee took shape slow, but it did take shape. Mrs. Calhoun ran point. She's got a backbone under those garden gloves, and the Daniels family joined too. They asked me to help draft a new charter, which I did, but made clear I wasn't looking for a title. It wasn't about me. I wanted the neighbors to own this win. Of course, the cleanup from Colleen's reign wasn't just about rules and paperwork. It was about undoing fear. You'd be surprised how long it takes for people to trust again after months of being watched, reported, fined for nothing. Some residents had paid hundreds of dollars in bogus violations. A single mom told me she'd considered selling her place just to get away from it. But when the refund checks started showing up, small, sure, but real, something shifted. People started waving when they passed on the street. Kids played in yards again. For the first time, the place felt less like a gated camp and more like a neighborhood. Then, About a month after Colleen's ousting, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Not another violation, but a plain envelope from the Department of Justice. Not a final ruling, those take forever, but confirmation that a formal oversight inquiry had opened based on my referral. They wanted statements from residents, evidence logs, anything I could share. Mrs. Calhoun cried when I told her. Mr. Daniels shook my hand and just said, "About time." Nobody threw a party, but it was the best news we'd had in a while. And right when things seemed to settle, something happened that I never saw coming. It was a Tuesday evening, sky heavy with summer storm clouds, when Mark Barron knocked on my door. He looked tired, but lighter somehow, like he'd set down a weight he'd been carrying for years. In his hand was a small box. "Found this in my files," he said, eyes flicking down. Inside, photographs. Not of violations, but of block parties, birthday cakes, old neighborhood get-togethers before Colleen took over. He'd been keeping memories safe, waiting for a time when it was okay to remember the good stuff. That night, we sat on my porch flipping through them, laughing at the hairstyles, the cars, the terrible matching t-shirts from some forgotten 4th of July. It was the first time I realized how much we'd lost, how much we'd let one person steal from all of us. But it was also the first time I saw hope, real hope, stretching further than our front lawns. But you know what? Not everybody was happy about the changes. Colleen's loyalists, her task force guys, didn't just disappear. A couple started grumbling at meetings, muttering about order and tradition, asking when things would go back to the way they were. One evening, I caught a pair of them eyeing Leia's mural, hands on hips like they were deciding whether to complain or just wipe the whole thing away when nobody was looking. I didn't say a word. I just stood nearby, arms crossed, and watched until they moved along. Sometimes, all it takes to stop a bully is knowing someone's watching who isn't scared anymore. Leia, meanwhile, was busy being a kid again, sketching, running, even starting to help Mrs. Calhoun with the roses. But she was different, too. A little older, a little tougher. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at the archway, lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" I'd ask. "Just listening," she'd say. "It sounds different now." And she was right. The air wasn't thick with suspicion anymore. But then came the curveball, because no story is ever finished, right? A couple months after the DOJ letter, we got word that Colleen had filed a lawsuit against the HOA, the board, and me personally. Claims of defamation, emotional distress, wrongful removal, you name it. My first instinct was to laugh. My second was to call Agent Nichols. "Should I be worried?" I asked. He just chuckled. "Let her file. She's got nothing but paper. Let the courts handle her." He was right, but I won't pretend it didn't keep me up some nights, the what-ifs running laps in my mind. Leia sensed it, too. One night, as I tucked her in, she whispered, "Are we going to have to move?" I hugged her close. "No, kiddo. Not this time. We're right where we belong." What I didn't expect was how the neighborhood rallied. Letters, emails, a GoFundMe for legal fees started by people I barely knew. That's when it really hit me. We weren't just a collection of houses anymore. We were a community, in the messy, stubborn, beautiful way that word's supposed to mean. Even the kids pitched in, holding a lemonade stand and donating the money for the court people. Try explaining civil procedure to a 6-year-old with lemonade on her chin. The court tossed Colleen's case in less than a month. Judge's words were blunt. No basis, no damages, no grounds for appeal. That ruling was like rain after drought. The fear, finally, started to wash away. I spent that night on the porch with Leia, sharing a bowl of ice cream, not saying much, just breathing. Finally, by the end of summer, the archway was a landmark again. Families taking photos, kids adding their marks. The new HOA charter passed unanimously, and the resident committee opened meetings too. Everyone, every vote, every budget, right there in the open. Nobody ever wore a vest or carried a radio again. And Colleen? She sold her house in silence, packed a U-Haul at dawn, and vanished. Nobody threw eggs, nobody cheered. She was just gone. In her place, we got Mrs. Calhoun's brownies, Mr. Daniels' backyard barbecues, and kids, so many kids, drawing in the street. If you're still listening, maybe you've got your own HOA horror story. Maybe you've never faced down a board, or maybe you're thinking about it. Here's what I learned. The rules matter, sure, but the people matter more. Bullies only win when everyone else gives in. And sometimes, it takes just one person willing to get loud, to push back, to draw a line in sidewalk chalk that nobody can erase. So tell me, what's your story? Have you ever stood up for someone, or for yourself? Would you have fought, or walked away? Drop your answers in the comments. And if you're dealing with a Colleen of your own, don't back down. You'd be surprised how fast things change when enough people say, no more. Yeah, that happened. And I'd do it again. If you want more stories like this, of everyday folks taking back what's theirs, hit subscribe, share your craziest HOA moment, and let's remind each other what community is supposed to be. See you out there, maybe under an archway, with a box of sidewalk chalk and a grin that says, go ahead, try to stop us.